The text message flashed defiantly on my phone screen. "You're banned from Thanksgiving, idiot," my mother had typed in all caps, punctuated by a laughing emoji. Through that tiny digital portal, I could almost hear the raucous laughter of my family, reveling in my humiliation. The family group chat erupted with a barrage of messages supporting my exclusion. My chest constricted, but rather than pleading for their acceptance, I simply replied, "Okay," and placed my phone down. They wanted me out. Fine, I would craft my own plans. What they failed to anticipate was how swiftly their idyllic holiday gathering would unravel when the bills went unpaid, or how my phone would soon blaze with 25 missed calls from the very people who had ridiculed me. I'm Ellen Sullivan, 32 years old and a senior accountant at Riverdale Financial. I've always been the responsible one in our family, a role I never chose, but one that was thrust upon me by circumstance. Growing up in our tumultuous household in Mapleton, my childhood was a balancing act of responsibilities that should never have been mine to bear. My parents, Judy and Frank Sullivan, had a dismal grasp of finances. Dad would indulge in new fishing gear right when the electricity bill was due, while Mom would splurge on designer handbags when our refrigerator stood empty. By the age of 11, I was sorting through the mail to extract bills marked final notice, using my babysitting earnings to purchase groceries. While my friends enjoyed summer camps, I remained home, counting coins and negotiating payment plans with utility companies, employing my best adult voice. "Ellen will figure it out" became our family's motto. Whenever financial calamity loomed, and it always did, I managed to put myself through state college by juggling 2 jobs, graduating with honors, and finally securing a stable position that granted me the financial security I had long sought. My younger brother Cody's car broke down again. "Call Ellen," my mother would say. She needed dental work that insurance wouldn't cover. Ellen would make it happen. Dad lost another job. Ellen would cover the mortgage until he found something new. I became the family bank, the emergency fund, the safety net. For years, I accepted this role, convinced that supporting family was simply what responsible people did. But everything shifted last summer when Cody, now 27, received his 3rd DUI. He needs $13,000 for bail and lawyer fees, Mom told me over the phone as casually as if she were reading off a grocery list. "No," I replied, surprising myself with the strength in my voice. "Not this time." The silence on the other end was deafening. "What do you mean, no?" Mom finally asked, her tone incredulous. "I mean, I won't bail him out again. He needs to face the consequences of his actions." That moment marked the beginning of the chill between us. Mom grew increasingly distant during our weekly calls. Dad stopped inquiring about my life altogether. My sister Amber, who had always been the favorite, seized every chance to remind me of my perceived heartlessness. "Some of us actually care about family," she told me during a particularly strained Sunday dinner at my parents' house. Amber had never contributed a single dime to family emergencies, yet she excelled at providing emotional support, which somehow seemed to outweigh my years of financial sacrifice. 2 weeks before Thanksgiving, I suggested family therapy to address our issues. We convened in my parents' cluttered living room, the same space where I had once stayed up late as a teenager, calculating how to stretch Dad's paycheck until the end of the month. "I feel taken advantage of," I admitted, my hands trembling slightly. "I want to help, but there need to be boundaries." The meeting concluded with Mom labeling me as stuck up and Dad accusing me of believing I was superior to everyone else. Cody stormed out in a huff, while Amber shot me that pitying look she had perfected over the years. The following day, as I scrolled through Instagram, I stumbled upon something that made my stomach twist in knots. Amber had posted photos from a swanky restaurant called the Harvest Table, captioning it, "Booked for Thanksgiving, going to be the best holiday ever with the fam." The post garnered 27 likes and a flurry of comments from my parents and various relatives, all bubbling with excitement. Not a single person had mentioned Thanksgiving plans to me. No one had extended an invitation. As I browsed through the comments, one from my mother struck me like a punch to the gut. can't wait. So nice to celebrate without any drama this year. I realized I was the drama they were so keen to avoid. After years of supporting them, I had been excluded from the family holiday simply because I had finally drawn a line. On the morning of November 15th, exactly 1 week before Thanksgiving, my phone pinged with a message that would alter everything. Mom had made it official with her text. "You're banned from Thanksgiving, idiot." I stared at the screen, struggling to comprehend the casual cruelty behind her words. Before I could formulate a response, a barrage of messages flooded the family group chat. Amber chimed in, "Finally, a holiday without Miss Perfect watching every bite we take." Cody added, "Maybe we can actually enjoy ourselves without Ellen's judgmental looks." Dad simply stated, "Let's just focus on having a good time, everyone." No one came to my defense. No one suggested that this was going too far. With trembling fingers, I called my mother, desperate for an explanation, for some sign of misunderstanding. "Ellen," she answered, her voice thick with exasperation. "What is it now?" "Mom, I just saw the group chat." "Are you seriously banning me from Thanksgiving?" I asked, disbelief lacing my voice. "Oh, don't be so dramatic. We just thought it would be better this way. You obviously don't approve of our choices, and we want to enjoy ourselves without feeling judged. When have I ever judged you at Thanksgiving?" My voice cracked, the hurt evident. "I've hosted it at my apartment for the past 3 years and covered all the costs." "See? That's exactly it. You always have to remind us that you're the one paying. We're tired of feeling like charity cases." The hypocrisy was staggering. "So you don't want me to pay, yet you're upset that I wouldn't cover Cody's DUI? That's different," Mom snapped back. "That was family helping family. Your Thanksgiving hosting always felt like you were showing off." The conversation spiraled from there, with Mom ultimately revealing what I had long suspected but never wanted to accept. "You think we don't know? You look down on us with your fancy job and your nice apartment. You help us out just so you can feel superior." "That's not true," I whispered, tears streaming down my cheeks. "I help because I love you. If you loved us, you wouldn't have conditions. You wouldn't keep score." After we hung up, I collapsed onto my couch, struggling to comprehend the whirlwind of emotions that had just transpired. My phone buzzed incessantly with group chat notifications. Despite my better judgment, I glanced at it again. To my surprise, my Aunt Tracy had chimed in. "Aren't you all being a bit harsh on Ellen? She's done a lot for this family." Mom's reply was immediate. "Stay out of this, Tracy. You don't know the whole story." Several relatives jumped in, some supporting the decision to exclude me, while others questioned it. The family was fracturing over my banishment. My chest tightened to the point where I struggled to breathe. The room began to spin around me. I was having a full-blown panic attack, something I hadn't experienced since college when I was juggling a 30-hour work week alongside a full course load. I reached out to the only person I trusted completely, my best friend. She arrived at my apartment just 20 minutes later, armed with ice cream and wine. "I knew your family was selfish, but this is a whole new level," she remarked after I showed her the messages. "Maybe they're right," I murmured, wiping my tear-streaked face. "Maybe I do act superior." "Ellen, stop. You've been their ATM for years. The one time you set a boundary, they banish you. That's not normal." Megan hesitated before continuing. "And there's something you should know. They've been bad-mouthing you to the extended family for years." "What? How do you know that?" I asked, my heart racing. "Remember when I met your cousin Lindsay at your birthday party last year? We kept in touch. She told me, your mother and Amber are always telling relatives that you think you're too good for them, that you only help out to lord it over everyone." The betrayal cut deep, twisting the knife of hurt even further. While I had been defending my family to friends who questioned my generosity, they had been painting me as the villain. As Megan and I talked, a notification from my bank flashed on my phone. A charge for $3,000 at the harvest table was pending approval due to unusual activity. "What the hell?" I exclaimed, quickly opening my banking app. I had never authorized this. I called the restaurant and uncovered the devastating truth. Someone had used my credit card to place a deposit for a Thanksgiving dinner for 15 people in my mother's name. The reservation had been made 3 weeks ago, the manager informed me. The remaining balance of $4,500 is due on the day of the event, the manager informed me. They had banned me from a Thanksgiving that they were planning to make me pay for. My hands trembled as I hung up the phone, the magnitude of their deception crashing over me like a tidal wave. "They stole your credit card information," Megan said, her disbelief palpable. "That's actual fraud, Ellen. It's a crime." The reality of the situation settled heavily on my shoulders. This wasn't just a family squabble, it was theft. I immediately called my bank to cancel my cards and report the fraudulent activity. The representative on the other end was sympathetic, yet resolute. "Would you like to press charges, Miss Sullivan?" The question lingered in the air, heavy and daunting. These were my parents, my siblings. Despite everything, could I truly involve the police? "Let me think about it," I finally replied, "but please ensure that no more charges go through." After ending the call, I reached out to my friend Jess, who happened to be a lawyer, specializing in family law. "I hate to say this," she began after I explained the situation, "but you need to protect yourself. This likely isn't the first time they've taken advantage of you financially." She was right. There had been other suspicious charges over the years that I had brushed aside. A vacation package I didn't recall approving. Online shopping deliveries sent to my parents' address that I had never questioned. I had been so focused on seeing the best in my family that I had ignored the glaring evidence before me. Jess assisted me in drafting a clear, firm email to my family outlining my awareness of the unauthorized use of my credit card, the cancellation of all cards, and that any future attempts to misuse my financial information would result in legal action. I hesitated for a moment before hitting send, but Megan squeezed my shoulder reassuringly. "They need to know there are boundaries," she said softly. The email dispatched with a gentle whoosh, and an eerie calm settled over me. For the first time in my adult life, I had confronted my family's financial exploitation head-on. "So what now?" Megan asked, her eyes searching mine. "What are you going to do for Thanksgiving?" I realized I hadn't thought that far ahead. The holiday was merely a week away. Normally, I would be knee-deep in planning, shopping, and preparing to host. "I don't know," I admitted, feeling lost. "I guess I could just stay home, order Chinese food, and watch movies." "Or," Megan said, a gleam in her eye, "you could do something completely different, something for yourself." The seed of an idea began to take root in my mind. What if I created my own Thanksgiving, not just for myself, but for others who might not have a place to go? "A misfit Thanksgiving," I said slowly, "for people who don't have family celebrations to attend." The idea invigorated me. I started making a list of those who might appreciate an invitation. Gary from accounting, whose children were spending the holiday with his ex-wife. My elderly neighbor, Mrs. Jenkins, who had mentioned her children lived out of state. And Megan herself, who usually flew home but had canceled this year due to work commitments. I crafted simple digital invitations and began sending them out. To my surprise, responses flooded back almost immediately, most with enthusiastic acceptance. However, my small apartment wouldn't accommodate everyone. My colleague Patrick, who had finalized his divorce earlier that year, offered a solution. "I have that big house in the suburbs now, and it's just me rattling around in it," he said when I explained my predicament. "We could host it there." "I'd love to help," he said, and with the venue issue resolved, I immersed myself in the planning process. I crafted a menu that not only featured traditional Thanksgiving dishes, but also included recipes reflecting the diverse backgrounds of our guests. Each time I checked something off my list, I felt a little lighter, a bit more in control of my circumstances. In between preparations, I decided to call my grandfather, William, my father's father, who had been largely absent from family gatherings for years. I had always heard he was difficult and preferred solitude, but suddenly I wondered if there was more to his story. "Ellen, what a pleasant surprise," he answered, his voice warm and inviting. When I inquired about his Thanksgiving plans, he chuckled softly. "No, nothing special. Your father and I don't exactly see eye to eye, as you know. Would you like to come to my Thanksgiving? It's not with the family. I'm hosting some friends and colleagues." There was a brief pause. Did something happen, Ellen? I found myself sharing everything with him. To my astonishment, his story mirrored mine in many ways. "They did the same thing to me years ago," he revealed. "When I stopped paying for their mistakes, I became the villain. It's a pattern in this family, I'm afraid." His validation meant more to me than I could express. We talked for nearly 2 hours, and for the first time, I understood why he had kept his distance. It wasn't coldness, it was self-preservation. "I'd be honored to attend your Thanksgiving," he said before we hung up. "And Ellen, I'm proud of you for breaking the cycle." As I continued preparing for my alternative celebration, I found myself embracing the freedom of creating new traditions. There would be no more walking on eggshells, no tense undercurrents of financial obligation, and no silent treatments for perceived slights, just people choosing to be together, grateful for the connection they shared. Then, 3 days before Thanksgiving, I received a call from my bank's fraud department that turned everything upside down. "Miss Sullivan, we found evidence of systematic unauthorized access to your accounts going back approximately 4 years," the fraud investigator explained. "Multiple credit lines have been opened in your name, and there have been regular transfers to accounts belonging to Judith and Frank Sullivan. My parents hadn't merely stolen my card information for Thanksgiving, they had been stealing from me for years." The investigator continued, detailing how my identity had been used to open credit accounts I had no knowledge of. The total amount stolen was staggering, nearly $70,000 over 4 years. This wasn't opportunistic theft. This was a calculated, ongoing fraud committed by my own parents against their daughter, who had already given them so much voluntarily. "We strongly recommend you file a police report," the investigator advised. "This is one of the more severe cases of familial identity theft we've encountered." I thanked him numbly and hung up, the revelation leaving me shattered, yet strangely liberated. There was no more room for doubt, no way to rationalize or excuse their behavior. The decision on how to proceed was painfully clear. Just 3 days before Thanksgiving, my phone erupted with notifications. The first call came from my sister Amber at 6:15 in the morning. "What the hell did you do?" she demanded without preamble. "The restaurant called and said our cards were declined." I was still groggy from a restless night spent processing the bank's revelations. I canceled my cards immediately after discovering the unauthorized charges. "You knew we were using your card," Mom said. "You offered." "I absolutely did not," I replied, now fully awake. "I hadn't even known about the reservation until I saw the charge." "God, you're so petty. So we used your card without asking. It's not like you couldn't afford it. You're really going to ruin Thanksgiving over this?" "Amber, what you're describing is credit card fraud. It's a crime." She hung up on me. 10 minutes later, Mom called, leaving a vicious voicemail when I didn't answer. "You selfish, ungrateful child. After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us? By embarrassing us and ruining everyone's holiday? Your father is devastated. The whole family is talking about what a spiteful person you've become. I hope you're happy in that fancy apartment all alone on Thanksgiving." The irony of her calling me ungrateful while simultaneously being caught stealing from me was almost laughable. Almost. The calls kept coming throughout the morning. Dad, aunts, uncles, cousins. Each message expressed varying degrees of outrage at my supposed pettiness and vindictiveness. Not once did anyone acknowledge the theft. Around noon, my doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw Cody shifting nervously in the hallway. Against my better judgment, I opened the door. "Ellen," he began, his tone placating, "We need to talk about this Thanksgiving situation." I let him in, but remained standing, arms crossed. "There's nothing to talk about. Mom and Dad used my credit card without permission." "Look, I get why you're upset," he said, pacing my living room. "But you don't understand what you've done. The harvest table won't hold the reservation without a new deposit today. Everyone's already made plans. Grandma Lucy is flying in from Arizona." That sounds like a problem for whoever made the reservation under false premises. His friendly demeanor vanished instantly. "You think you're so perfect, don't you? Just because you have a good job and don't screw up like the rest of us?" "This isn't about who's perfect, Cody. It's about respecting boundaries." "Boundaries?" he scoffed. "We're family. There aren't supposed to be boundaries." That's exactly the problem. You all think being family means unlimited access to my money. His expression darkened. "You know what? Mom was right about you. You've always thought you were better than us." He moved closer, his voice dropping to a threatening whisper. "You have no idea what you've started. When the family finds out you're the reason Thanksgiving is canceled, no one will ever speak to you again." Then, just as quickly as his anger had flared, it subsided, replaced by a pleading tone. "Please, Ellen, just this once. Pay for the dinner. I'll pay you back, I swear." "Like you paid me back for the 2 previous DUI lawyers or the car I helped you buy that you totaled?" He had no response to that. After he left, I received a text from my Aunt Tracy. "The harvest table just canceled the reservation completely. Your mother is having a meltdown. What's going on?" I briefly explained the situation, including the unauthorized use of my card. Her response surprised me. "I always wondered how they afforded that reservation. I'm so sorry, Ellen." That afternoon, my phone rang again. This time it was Amber, her voice thick with tears. "Mom told everyone you promised to pay for Thanksgiving," she sobbed. "Grandma Lucy is devastated. Aunt Patricia already bought her plane ticket. Everyone thinks you backed out at the last minute." "That's a lie." "And you know it," I said, keeping my voice steady. "No one even told me about the plans until I was explicitly uninvited." "Well, that's not what Mom's been telling people." "Of course not. The truth would make her look bad." There was a long pause. "Is it true?" Amber finally asked about the credit cards. "Yes, and apparently it's been going on for years." Another pause followed. "I didn't know that part," she admitted quietly. "Mom just said you had agreed to cover Thanksgiving as usual." For the first time, I detected a hint of doubt in my sister's voice. Her unwavering loyalty to our mother had always been Amber's defining characteristic, so even this small crack felt significant. Throughout the day, extended family members began reaching out directly. My cousin Sarah called to say she'd felt uncomfortable with how I was being treated in the family group chat. My Uncle Dave texted asking for the real story. Then my Aunt Tracy called again, this time with an unexpected request. "Ellen, I know this is presumptuous after everything that's happened, but I heard through Megan that you're hosting your own Thanksgiving. Would it be terribly inappropriate if I asked to join you instead? Your cousin Dylan would like to come too." I was taken aback. "You want to come to my Thanksgiving? We've both been uncomfortable with how Judy and Frank have been treating you. This situation with the credit cards is the last straw for me. My brother needs to face consequences for once in his life." I felt conflicted. These were family members who had stood by while I was mocked and excluded, only to switch sides when their holiday plans collapsed. Yet the olive branch felt significant. "Let me think about it," I promised. Before I could fully process the request, my work phone rang. It was my receptionist, her voice uncharacteristically nervous. "Ellen, I'm so sorry to bother you, but your mother is here. She's making quite a scene in the lobby, demanding to see you. Security is asking what they should do." My blood ran cold. "Tell them not to let her up. I'll be right down." When I reached the lobby, my mother was berating the security guard, her voice echoing across the marble floor. "I have every right to see my daughter." "This is ridiculous, Mom," I said, keeping my voice low. "What are you doing here?" She spun around, her face flushed with anger. "Finally, tell this man to let me upstairs." "We need to talk outside," I said, nodding apologetically to the guard. Once on the sidewalk, Mom launched into her tirade. "You've gone too far this time, Ellen. Canceling the cards, reporting fraud, your own parents?" "You stole from me," I stated flatly. "For years, apparently. We borrowed. That's what family does." "No, Mom. Borrowing involves asking permission and paying back." Her eyes narrowed. "You think you're so smart with your fancy job? Maybe your boss would be interested to hear about some of your family secrets. How about I tell him about the time you shoplifted in high school or your little anxiety problem in college?" I stared at her, stunned by the blatant threat. "Are you blackmailing me? I'm reminding you where your loyalties should lie." In that moment, looking at the stranger wearing my mother's face, something broke inside me. Not in a way that hurt, but in a way that freed me. The last thread of obligation, of familial duty, of desperate hope for approval, snapped clean. "I'm not paying for Thanksgiving," I stated with perfect clarity. "I'm not giving you any more money ever, and if you ever come to my workplace again or try to contact my colleagues, I will get a restraining order." For the first time in my life, I saw fear in my mother's eyes. Not fear for me, but fear of me, fear of the consequences I now represented. "You don't mean that," she whispered. "We're your family." "Yes," I agreed, and that's what makes this so unforgivable. After the confrontation with my mother, I decided to take a week off work. My boss was understanding, especially after I explained that I was dealing with a family situation involving potential identity theft. I remained vague on the details. Despite my mother's threats, no family secrets were revealed. With time away from the office, I immersed myself in Thanksgiving preparations. Patrick and I met at his spacious colonial home in the suburbs to plan the menu and decorations. His kitchen was a chef's dream, complete with double ovens and a massive island perfect for preparing multiple dishes. "I haven't been excited about a holiday in years," Patrick admitted as we made our lists. "Since the divorce, I've just been going through the motions." "I know what you mean," I replied. "I've been so focused on meeting everyone else's expectations that I forgot holidays are supposed to be enjoyable." Our initial guest list of 6 or 7 had grown to 15. In addition to my colleagues and neighbors, Aunt Tracy and Cousin Dylan had confirmed their attendance, my grandfather William would be coming, and Megan had invited 2 friends who couldn't afford flights home. Patrick had also included his elderly next-door neighbor and a cousin visiting from Seattle. It was a mismatched group of people connected by little more than their separation from traditional family celebrations, but somehow that made it feel even more special. The Sunday before Thanksgiving, Grandpa William came over to share his cherished recipes. At 82, he moved slowly, yet his mind remained as sharp as ever. He brought with him a box of yellowed recipe cards, each one penned in my grandmother's delicate handwriting. "Martha's sweet potato casserole was legendary," he said, "and her cranberry relish won the county fair 3 years running." As we sifted through the recipes, he shared stories I had never heard before about my father's childhood, about family gatherings long before I was born. There was a wistfulness in his voice, yet also a steely resolve that I recognized. "Your grandmother and I tried for years to help your father become financially responsible," he revealed. "We paid off his debts, co-signed loans, and gave him chance after chance. Finally, when he was about 40, we had to stop. He stole your grandmother's jewelry when we refused to bail him out of another mess. He stole from you, too." I wasn't entirely surprised, but the confirmation still stung. William nodded solemnly. The family sided with him, claiming we were heartless for not helping our son. That's when we stepped back from the larger family gatherings. "I always thought you just preferred to be alone." "That's the story they told," he said with a sad smile, easier than admitting their behavior drove us away. The parallel to my own situation was unmistakable. The cycle was repeating itself, generation after generation. Later that afternoon, Aunt Tracy brought over old family photos she had digitized. We sat in my living room, scrolling through images spanning decades, with Tracy pointing out patterns I had never noticed. "See here, your father's graduation," Tracy pointed out. "My parents paid for the party, but look at the banner. It says hosted by Frank and Judy. They always took credit for others' generosity." Photo after photo told the same story, my parents at the center, always benefiting from others' resources while presenting themselves as the providers, the generous ones. "I should have said something years ago," Tracy sighed, "when I saw them doing the same thing to you, training you from childhood to be the responsible one. I just didn't want to cause problems." "It's not your fault," I assured her. "We all wanted to believe the best about them." As Thanksgiving approached, the guests for our gathering began to connect. I created a group chat for menu coordination, and people started sharing their own stories of family exclusion or holiday difficulties. Patrick's neighbor, Mrs. Winters, had been uninvited from her daughter's Thanksgiving after disagreeing with her son-in-law's politics. Gary from accounting had been excluded from his family celebration because his new boyfriend wasn't welcome. Megan's friend Tasha had grown up in foster care and had never experienced a traditional family Thanksgiving at all. What had started as a last-minute alternative plan was evolving into something meaningful, a genuine community of people who understood what it meant to be on the outside. 2 days before Thanksgiving, I received a certified letter that sent a chill through me. My parents had consulted a lawyer who claimed I had made verbal commitments to financial support that constituted an implied contract. They were threatening to sue me for elder support based on the pattern of financial assistance I had established. I forwarded the letter to Jess immediately. Her response was both reassuring and infuriating. "This is a scare tactic," she explained over the phone. "There's no legal merit to their claim, especially given the evidence of identity theft," Jess explained. "But it shows how desperate they've become now that their financial pipeline is cut off." "What should I do?" I asked, feeling a knot of anxiety tighten in my stomach. "Nothing for now. Let me handle any legal communications. Focus on your Thanksgiving." I tried to follow her advice, but the letter had shaken me to my core. The audacity of threatening legal action against me after everything they had done was almost incomprehensible. Yet, at the same time, it was perfectly in character. They had always believed themselves entitled to whatever I had. The day before Thanksgiving, I found solace in baking pies at Patrick's house. The familiar, methodical process of mixing dough and preparing fillings calmed my nerves, allowing me to escape my worries for a while. Patrick worked alongside me, chopping vegetables for the next day and occasionally breaking into impulsive dance moves that made me laugh despite everything weighing on me. "You know," he said as we worked, "I've been thinking about what makes a real family. It's not blood, it's not obligation, it's choice, chosen family." I nodded in agreement. "That's what we're creating tomorrow." "Exactly," he replied. "People who choose to support each other, not because they have to, but because they want to." The concept resonated deeply within me. All my life, I had been told that family loyalty meant enduring mistreatment, that love meant allowing myself to be used. What if the opposite was true? What if real love included boundaries, respect, and reciprocity? That evening, my phone pinged with a message from an unknown number. It was my cousin Sarah, whom I hadn't spoken to in years. "Ellen, I heard what Aunt Judy and Uncle Frank did. I'm so sorry. Everyone's talking about it now, and a lot of us are on your side. The story about you backing out of paying is falling apart." "I wish I could be at your Thanksgiving tomorrow instead of the disaster happening at Grandma Lucy's house that she's hosting now. I would love to reconnect soon." The message felt like a small vindication. The truth was emerging, slowly but surely. My parents' version of events wasn't holding up under scrutiny. As I fell asleep that night, I felt a strange mix of sadness and hope. The family I had known was irreparably changed. The illusions I had maintained about our relationships lay shattered around me. Yet, from those broken pieces, something new was taking shape, something that might ultimately be healthier and more genuine than what had been lost. Thanksgiving morning dawned clear and cold. I had stayed overnight at Patrick's house to get an early start on cooking. By 6:30, I was elbow-deep in stuffing preparation when I suddenly realized my phone was buzzing relentlessly from my purse. When I finally checked, I was stunned to see 25 missed calls accumulated overnight after I had turned off silent mode. The voicemails ranged from pleading to threatening. "Mom, Ellen, this has gone far enough. The family is in chaos. You need to fix this." "Dad, Pumpkin, whatever's bothering you, we can work it out. Call me back." "Amber, you've made your point. Everyone's miserable. Are you happy now?" "Cody, you think you're so much better than everyone. Watch your back." "Aunt Patricia, I flew all the way from Arizona for this disaster. Thanks for nothing." The messages continued, each one a stark reminder that despite everything, they still expected me to solve their problems. No one acknowledged the theft or the years of manipulation. In their minds, I was still the unreasonable one who needed to come around. I showed the messages to Patrick, who looked increasingly concerned. "Should we be worried about them showing up here?" Patrick asked, concern etched on his face. "They don't know where you live," I assured him, though a flicker of unease passed through me. We continued our preparations, knowing guests were expected at 2. Grandpa William arrived first, bringing a bottle of fine scotch in his warm presence. Mrs. Jenkins followed, bearing homemade rolls that filled the house with a delightful yeasty aroma. One by one, our misfit gathering assembled, each person contributing something special to the celebration. By 1:30, the house hummed with lively conversation and laughter. I was in the kitchen basting the turkey when Patrick appeared at my side, his expression tense. "Ellen, your family is here." My heart dropped. What? How did they find us? "I don't know, but they're at the front door. Your mother, father, sister, and brother." I wiped my hands on a towel, straightened my shoulders, and walked to the entryway. Through the sidelight windows, I could see them huddled on the porch. Mom stood at the front, of course, with Dad looking uncomfortable behind her. Amber shifted from foot to foot, while Cody stood with his arms crossed defensively. I opened the door, but remained in the threshold, blocking their entry. "What are you doing here?" I demanded. "We've come for Thanksgiving," Mom announced, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "Since our plans fell through, we thought we'd join yours." The audacity was breathtaking. "You banned me from your Thanksgiving, remember? You're banned, idiot. Those were your exact words." "Oh, that was just a little family spat. You know how these things go." Behind me, I could sense our guests growing quiet, listening intently to the confrontation unfolding. "How did you find this address?" I asked. Mom waved her hand dismissively. "And Tracy told us when we called her this morning that she mentioned she was coming here." I made a mental note to be more cautious with the information I shared in the future, even with relatives who seemed supportive. "Well, I'm sorry you came all this way, but you're not welcome here," I declared. "Ellen," my father stepped forward, his face reddening, "that's no way to talk to your mother." "Actually, it's exactly how to talk to someone who stole my identity, used my credit cards without permission, and then threatened to blackmail me at my workplace." His expression fell. He hadn't known about the workplace incident, apparently. Amber pushed forward, her voice rising. "We're family, Ellen. You can't just cut us off over money." "This isn't about money," I replied, my voice steady. "It's about respect. It's about boundaries, none of which any of you seem to understand." "So you'll let Aunt Tracy in, but not your own mother?" Mom's voice rose indignantly. "After all, I've sacrificed for you." I almost laughed. "What exactly have you sacrificed for me, Mom? I've been supporting this family financially since I was a teenager. I gave you life, and that doesn't entitle you to steal from me for the rest of it." By now, guests had begun to gather in the hallway behind me. Patrick stood closest, a solid presence at my back. Grandpa William stepped forward to stand beside me. "Judy, Frank," he acknowledged with a curt nod. "This is a private gathering. You weren't invited." "Dad," my father said, clearly surprised to see his arranged father. "You're here?" "I am by invitation." "So you'll side with Ellen against your own son?" "I'm siding with decency and honesty," my grandfather replied calmly. something you might want to try sometime." The tension in the air was palpable. Other guests began to step outside, forming an impromptu barrier between my family and the door. "Listen," I said, trying one last time to reason with them. "What you've done is serious. Identity theft, credit card fraud, blackmail, these are crimes. I have every right to press charges." For the first time, fear flickered across my mother's face. "You wouldn't do that to your own parents?" "I don't want to," I replied, "but you need to understand that things have changed. I'm not your personal bank anymore. I'm not the family fixer. If you want a relationship with me going forward, it has to be built on mutual respect." "You ungrateful little," my mother began, but my father interrupted her with a firm hand on her arm. "Judy, stop." He looked suddenly tired, older than his years. "Ellen, we've made mistakes. The credit cards, it just started small. A bill here and there when we were short, then it got easier." "Frank," my mother looked horrified at his admission. "No, Judy, she's right. We crossed lines." He turned back to me, his expression earnest. "The truth is, we're in trouble, deep trouble. The house is 3 months behind on payments. Cody's legal bills keep piling up. We thought you'd bail us out like you always do." The raw honesty was unexpected. For a moment, I felt the familiar pull of responsibility, the ingrained need to solve their problems. "I can't fix this for you," I said gently. "I can give you information about financial counseling, legal aid for Cody, but I can't give you money anymore. It hasn't helped. It's only enabled destructive patterns." "So that's it?" Amber's voice cracked. "You're just cutting us off?" "I'm establishing boundaries." Whether that means cutting you off depends on whether you can respect those boundaries. Mom's face hardened again. "Come on, everyone, we're not going to beg." She turned and stalked toward their car, Dad following her reluctantly. Cody lingered behind, leaning close to whisper, "This isn't over, Ellen. You think you can humiliate us like this? Wait and see what happens." As they drove away, Amber hurled something onto the lawn. Looking closer, I realized it was a box containing mementos from my childhood. My macaroni art from kindergarten, school awards, the stuffed bear I had cherished as a child. They had brought my keepsakes only to discard them in anger. The guests helped me gather the scattered items, treating each piece with a tenderness that brought tears to my eyes. We returned inside, where the warmth and food awaited, but I couldn't shake the sense of unease stemming from Cody's parting threat. The meal began with a moment of silent gratitude. Despite the dramatic confrontation, or perhaps because of it, there was a palpable feeling of solidarity among our gathered guests. People shared stories, both painful and hopeful, about family estrangements and new beginnings. Patrick gave me an encouraging smile from across the table. Grandpa William patted my hand reassuringly. Aunt Tracy, though clearly shaken by the encounter with her brother and sister-in-law, assured me that I had done the right thing. We were midway through dessert when my phone buzzed with a text from my neighbor, Jeff. "Ellen, there are people at your apartment. They look like they're trying to get in. Should I call the police?" Attached was a photo showing my parents' car parked in front of my building with Cody attempting to jimmy my apartment door. "They're breaking into my apartment," I announced, showing the text to the table. Patrick immediately stood up. "I'll drive you there." "No," I replied firmly. "I'm calling the police." It was the hardest call I'd ever made, but the evidence was right there on my phone. My family was attempting to burglarize my home after being denied financial support. The responding officers arrived before we could even leave Patrick's house, catching my parents and siblings in the act. I asked Jeff to stay on site as my representative, not quite ready to face my family again so soon. An hour later, the police called to inform me that Cody, Mom, and Dad had been taken into custody. Amber had been present but hadn't actively participated in the break-in, so she was released with a warning. "They claimed they were just retrieving their own property," the officer explained, "but without keys or permission, that's still breaking and entering." I closed my eyes, picturing the scene, my parents in a police car, my brother in handcuffs. It felt surreal and heartbreaking, yet it also seemed like the natural conclusion to years of escalating entitlement and boundary violations. "Would you like to press charges, Miss Sullivan?" the officer asked. After a long moment of contemplation, I responded, "Yes, for the break-in and for the identity theft. I'll come to the station tomorrow to provide all the evidence." There was no joy in this decision, only a somber recognition that without consequences, nothing would change. This wasn't vengeance. It was the only path to potential healing. Despite the family drama, we returned to the Thanksgiving gathering, determined not to let it overshadow the community we had created. The dinner continued, though with a more subdued tone. As people began to help with cleanup, I tapped my glass for attention. "I want to thank you all for being here today," I began, my voice trembling slightly. "This hasn't been the easiest Thanksgiving, but looking around this table, I see something far more than what I've lost. I see people who choose to support one another, who respect boundaries, and who understand that true family isn't about obligation or blood, but about genuine care." Glasses were raised all around the table. "To chosen family," Patrick added. "To chosen family," everyone echoed in unison. After dessert, as guests began to depart with leftovers and warm hugs, Aunt Tracy pulled me aside for a private conversation. "I need to apologize," she said, her eyes downcast. "I've watched how they treated you for years and said nothing. I convinced myself it wasn't my place to interfere." "You're here now," I responded. "That means a lot." "There's something else you should know," she hesitated. "This pattern goes back generations in our family. My parents did it to William and Martha. Frank and Judy did it to you. There's always one child designated as the responsible one, the provider, while the others are enabled in their worst behaviors." "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "Because someone needs to break the cycle," she said, simply, "and you're strong enough to do it." In the days that followed, I worked with Jess to establish clear legal and financial boundaries. My parents and Cody were charged with attempted breaking and entering and identity theft. Given the family relationship and their lack of prior criminal records, they were offered a plea deal that included probation, mandatory financial counseling, and restitution payments. The reaction from the extended family was mixed. Some relatives cut contact with me entirely, unable to accept that I had involved the legal system in a family matter. Others, like Aunt Tracy and several cousins, expressed their support for my decision to finally establish boundaries. Amber, perhaps the biggest surprise, reached out a month after Thanksgiving with a tentative olive branch. "I'm not saying what they did was right," she said during an awkward coffee meeting. "I just don't know how to be in the middle of all this." "You don't have to be in the middle," I told her. "You just need to respect the boundaries I've set." She nodded slowly. "I think I can do that." 6 months later, on Memorial Day weekend, I hosted another gathering of my chosen family. The group had evolved somewhat since Thanksgiving. Some connections had deepened, while others had naturally drifted apart. Patrick and I had grown particularly close, our friendship blossoming into something more. During the spring, Aunt Tracy came again, this time bringing cousin Sarah, who had reached out after Thanksgiving. My grandfather William was there, noticeably more energetic than he'd been months earlier, as if the reconciliation of certain truths had revitalized him. As we gathered around Patrick's backyard grill, I couldn't help but reflect on the journey of the past 6 months. My parents and Cody were still working through their probation requirements and attending court-mandated financial counseling. We had minimal contact, limited to necessary legal communications. According to Aunt Tracy, they were beginning to acknowledge their patterns, though true accountability remained elusive. Dad had found steady work for the first time in years. Mom had downsized many of her luxury spending habits. Cody had entered a substance abuse program after his third DUI finally resulted in jail time. Whether these changes would last or whether reconciliation would ever be possible remained to be seen. I had learned to hold space for both possibilities. The possibility that my family of origin might someday become individuals I could safely welcome back into my life, or that our paths had permanently diverged, was a thought that lingered in my mind. What I knew with certainty was that I had found peace with my decisions. The boundaries I had established had created space for healthier relationships to flourish. The financial burden I had carried for so long had lifted, allowing me to build my own security and future. As the evening wound down, I checked my phone out of habit and found a text message that stopped me in my tracks. From my mother's number, it contained just 2 words: "I'm sorry." No excuses, no justifications, no demands, just the simple acknowledgement I had never expected to receive. I showed the message to Patrick, who squeezed my hand. "A beginning," he said softly. Maybe, I agreed cautiously, "a very small one." Whether those 2 words represented a genuine turning point or merely another manipulation remained to be seen. But for the first time, I faced the uncertainty without anxiety. I had built a life rich with authentic connections. I had broken the cycle of obligation and exploitation that had defined my family for generations. I had learned that saying no to abuse could mean yes to genuine love and support. The setting sun cast a golden glow over our gathering, illuminating the faces of those who had chosen to be in each other's lives. In that moment, I felt a profound sense of gratitude for the painful Thanksgiving that had compelled me to draw a line, stand my ground, and discover what family could truly mean. Have you ever had to make the difficult choice to establish boundaries with family members? What helped you find the strength to stand firm? I would love to hear about your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to receive more narratives about finding strength through challenging family situations. Feel free to share this with someone who might need to hear this message today. Thank you for listening, and remember that sometimes the hardest choices lead to the most healing paths forward.